and welcome to what we would like to believe is going to be a stimulating session for all of us. You know, for many of us who have known Piyush over the years, much before also his moving into mainstream politics, I think it's a matter of great pride to know somebody who's virtually today become a national crisis manager. I mean, I remember 2014, June or July, late June I suppose, when he was in the deep end of the power and coal pool, which was in an utter chaos with the Supreme Court order, blackouts across the country, NPAs, generation going down, coal not reaching. That was a crisis of momentous proportions, which I think in few days' time he was put into the deep end of that, sorted that out. Railways now, in terms of pushing the high-speed agenda, electrification, station upgradation, service delivery, cleaning up the system. Another very, very major, shall I say, maybe crisis is not the word, but it's close to it. And finally, I mean, again, in very, very short notice, taking up the responsibilities when the Honorable Finance Minister was incapacitated in terms of his health reasons. So, as I said, Piyushji, it is, in many senses, we have now seen you as kind of a national crisis manager. So it's a very happy and a proud growth trajectory. So please accept our compliments.
No, you can ask me the tough questions, no problem. I actually want to make a confession today. And on the way to the Taj, I was wondering, should I not? But then I chose I must do it because I'm speaking from my heart today. We are now at the end of 5 years of working very closely with all of you. We've interacted very closely. Many times when I've been probably a little tough also on you, must have made a lot of adverse comments, some of which you may not have liked also. And while coming in, I was remembering when CII first was formed, must be about, 30 years ago? Much longer, but when we had the Bombay Club versus CII fight, when I was much younger, early 90s. And being from Mumbai, obviously, you can understand where our sympathies were at that point of time. And ever since then, it's always been a feeling that whether CII was a big boys club, whether CII was just a representative of big business, or what's it like? At the end of 5 years of deep engagement with all of you, and I want to share it with full gratitude to all of you, that I believe that CII is an absolutely outstanding organization. At the end of 5 years, I can say it has had some of the finest leaders. Your secretariat is par excellence. My conception that this is a big boys club or a rich man's club, save and except in the initial period when maybe I'm now proved wrong, that I used to argue about the GST being a rich man's or a big business agenda. But I acknowledge that probably I was wrong at that point of time. But truly, I can see that CII plays a very, very important role in the interface between the people of India, the government, trade and business, industry. And I wish all of you well, and I wish you continue this journey in the same spirit. We'll have Mr. Kirloskar taking over from Rakesh during the course of this AGM, I believe. And wish you well, Vikram. Thank you, Rakesh, for all your leadership. I think Uday is the lucky guy who got saved from, at least deferred for a year. But truly a wonderful engagement and a wonderful experience working with all of you. You can actually give yourselves a loud clap for all of you.
Talking about carrying on I have a deep-end political economy question. And I actually want to pick up the threads from the conversation with Shri Jaitley yesterday. And I'm going to fish out from my coat pocket a headline that made it to the Indian Express yesterday after the similar discussion with Mr. Jaitley. It said, India should move from redistribution of poverty to market-based reforms. This was the headline that's been picked up, and this was a fair amount of the conversation with Mr. Jaitley yesterday. The question for you is, and it's a deep political economy question, it cuts across party lines, is the enormity of tasks that face this nation, whether it is to pull millions of people out of poverty or to create hundreds of jobs or be an outstanding global power. Do you see that happening with the dominance of what is called statal systems, public systems, PSUs? Or do you see this being achieved largely with the government being in governance and private sector driving this for the next decade or 2 decades? It's a longish question. So seems to be some confusion in people's minds as to, is it going to be largely a state-driven system, or is India going to rely on the private sector to achieve these very, very humongous goals? Over to you, sir.
Good one. Well, first of all, the philosophy of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and we draw this from Pandit Dindayal Upadhyay, very clearly is that the nation's resources should first be put to use for the poorest of the poor. We cannot afford, and actually more than anybody else, all of you cannot afford to have a country with so much disparity of income. We cannot afford to have a country with nearly 150 districts, particularly on the eastern corridor, affected by Maoist violence. They'll be on our doorstep one of these days. It won't be, the day is not far off. Unless we really plan for the future of 130 crore Indians, we will not be able to truly get the fruits of development. And if this inequality of income keeps increasing, it's going to be a very big danger for the Indian social fabric, the political economy, and obviously when both of these get affected, businesses will get affected. But removal of poverty, getting rid of poverty, making sure that every citizen in this country has his basic needs met. I mean, at one point of time it was roti, kapda, makan, then it was bijli, sadak, pani. I think in today's world, I would imagine a day where, and I think we've already reached that day where getting 24 hours power is a given. If it doesn't come, then there's something seriously wrong. But now the stage has moved to obviously higher income levels. It's moved to how we can skill our workforce better, how we can start engaging with the world in the global perspective better. And I think all of this needs the people at the bottom of the pyramid also to rise in their quality of life, in their ease of living. And there is nothing which says that one or the other cannot coexist. Government will have to play an important role, be it in regulation, be it in some sort of encouragement to different sectors, different industries, different businesses, also ensuring an orderly development of industry. We cannot have industry also working in irrational fashions. After all, that's why you have an organization like CCI, to ensure that there is an orderly development in different industries. So government has its own role. PSUs also have their role. You can't wish them away. Now there are many things where literally getting the private sector to engage and implement properly is a challenge. With due respects to anybody who may not like what I say, but take banking for instance. Now, when we have to reach banking to the remotest corners, to the mountains or the Maoist affected areas in Jharkhand, PSUs have a role. When we want to do public delivery of services, very often PSUs are the only ones who come forward and who won't calculate that every transaction is going to cost me 75 rupees. So I think we'll have to look at a coexisting model. At the same time, government will have to become the agency which encourages larger private sector participation, yet regulating the orderly behavior. And together, if we work as partners, to my mind, the double-digit growth that this country has been eagerly waiting for is right at our doorstep, irrespective of whatever the Reserve Bank may say. And I think to some extent, the Reserve Bank will also have to introspect that whether they had any role to play in the economy going down to a potential 7.2% this year instead of 7.4 or 7.6. Or why we couldn't achieve a double digit faster. I think every organization will have to introspect how much contribution they have to the woes of the country today. But to my mind, double-digit growth is eminently doable. We will have to move out of the dole culture that Honorable Minister Mr. Jaitley said. We'll have to empower our people to become self-reliant, to be entrepreneurs, to work for a living. Because otherwise, I think it's a race to the bottom. If we keep encouraging doles, if we keep encouraging bad behavior, we are all going to be racing to the bottom rather than aspiring for the top.
Thank you. So, creative, energetic coexistence between government and private sector. Now, being election season, I will have to draw you into what all of us, friends and sitting in the hall, the two issues that come up in Indian, largely in the election season, which is cross-party, it's nothing to do with any political party, are two issues: criminalization of politics and electoral funding. There is, we all know, even a nexus between these two. And once again, I'm picking up the threads because Mr. Jaitley yesterday did speak about electoral bonds. But we want to utilize your presence in our midst today to seek your perspective on these two issues. Maybe criminalization of politics is far too complicated right now for a 1-hour session. But certainly electoral funding and the role that you see electoral bonds will play to achieve some positive outcomes is something all of us would like to hear you views.
Well, regarding criminalization, I can just mention a couple of two sentences. There are two types of criminal activities. One is heinous crimes like rape and murder and dacoity and stuff like that. Or even corruption for that matter. Large-scale corruption, misappropriation of the resources of the country or the wealth of the people of India. All of these are serious criminal activities. And then there's a second type of criminal case that is very often reflected in the affidavits of several candidates. Those are, when we protest, there's a protest going on at Jantar Mantar. And the police has put in the law that says you cannot, more than 5 people cannot assemble. That also becomes a case. And an FIR is filed and you have to keep going to the court several times. And all of us political leaders have at some point or the other done agitations, done activities which are of normal political nature, which also results in cases. Now we have the Association of Democratic Reforms come up with all those reports that 90% of the candidates are criminals and stuff like that. I think that's being very uncharitable. And I would request CII, and you have a very good research wing, to actually cull through these affidavits or get a team of lawyers to do it and differentiate the wheat from the chaff. Actually find out which are the parties and the candidates which have these heinous nature of crimes and which are of a routine nature of an agitation, Section 144, an agitation against the emergency. Suppose somebody had a case against the emergency in 1975 and the case still goes. My mother did a dharna at Matunga on the road protesting against Indira Gandhi's dictatorial behavior in the emergency. She was behind bars. Now, I don't think that's something which should be categorized in a criminal activity list because she was legitimately protesting a thing like the emergency. And I think it was the worst form of political intolerance that the country has ever seen. So those activities and activities which are of a serious criminal nature should be differentiated, and then we should see which party stands where. Very often cases in some states are also foisted wrongly, and the state where you come from would probably rank very high in that list.
Which state? I belong to Haryana.
Don't tell me. Are you serious?
I belong to Haryana.
Jesus, that's my state.
I've eaten the salt of the earth of Haryana.
I just Gurgaon from that perspective. But some states and some political leadership has also foisted cases which are absolutely without any basis. So somebody will have to do a serious working on it so that we don't scare the nation into believing that all of politics is bad. After all, we can't wish away politics. ऐसा नहीं हो जाए कि देश का भविष्य, the youth in this room starts thinking that this generation, our generation, is leaving behind a completely battered political system. So I think that's my view on criminalization of politics, and we must try and ensure that really the heinous crimes or the crimes which are of serious nature are brought out before the public, and public knows who are the candidates who are really not fit to be elected. I mean, for that matter, I was seeing yesterday some political affidavit being filed in which there are FIRs of pretty serious misappropriation of money. So those are cases which, of course, the people of India need to know, and that is why the Election Commission has stipulated this for the last, 20, 25 years. I think Session probably started it, or who started it. As regards electoral bonds, Chandrajit, is there a tax? Do I have an entitlement for a tax for attending? There are about 1,500 people in this room. So can you send me the list of names, addresses, mobile numbers and email IDs?
For those already not with you.
देखो, तन, मन और धन से साथ में आना चाहिए. But on a more serious note, for all these years, and I still remember my father had spearheaded a group of business people in Mumbai, and I'm talking of the 1996 election, if I remember correctly. The 1996 election, I don't know if Uday Bhai was a part of that group at that time. I don't see too many Mumbai faces here. Nimesh was not there, I know for certain. He goes away abroad, I think, every time there's an election. But a group of industrialists and businessmen in Mumbai had got together and sat with Prime Minister, with Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji at that point of time. And yesterday, Advani ji also has written about this electoral funding. Our party has been working relentlessly to try and clean up the political funding system, to try and get legitimate money to fund politics. And we do believe if the nation is being moved, the mindset of the nation is being changed to honest governance, honest business, then politics will also have to be run with clean money. But sadly, with the laws that prevailed until 2 years ago, when you had to write out a check to a particular political party, and there are so many people who may say that, look, I don't believe in anybody but the BJP, or you may, or somebody else may say, I don't believe in anybody but the Samajwadi Party. I don't believe in anybody but the Communist Party. Each one is entitled to his own views, and some may want to give to more than one party. But there was always a lurking fear that if I was to support party X, how would party Y take it? Or if I am in a state of Maharashtra and I have a government run by one party and the central government is some other party, I choose to support any one of those two, how the other will behave with me. And because of that fear, very, very few people were willing to write out a check for disclosure of their name that they have donated to one party or one party they've given less, another party more. That could be an individual choice, a preference, a liking, a belief in their ideology. A second disservice done by the same newspaper also which you just quoted is sensationalizing any name who has donated funds. So if Mr. X donates some money to a political party, if you choose to sensationalize that, because Falani company ne itna donation is party ko diya, you are actually scaring honest money from engaging with politics and public life. And I think you can't wish away politics and you can't wish away election expenses. It's a reality. If you want good politics and good governments to come in, we'll need good money to finance that. And in this scenario, this fear of the unknown, the fear of the opposition, or the other parties, not opposition, the other parties, the fear of reprisal, a fear of newspapers sensationalizing it or NGOs sensationalizing it, would deter people from writing out a check in an honest fashion. We experimented with electoral trusts with limited success. The electoral bonds, the advantage is that it's completely anonymous. But the money that goes in to buy an election bond is honest money, is clean money. There are proper rules framed. You should be a company which has a proper KYC, an Indian company or an individual who's a citizen of India, or a partnership company which is registered in India. You should have, the bank will check your KYC and that you are a genuine and good company. And then you buy those bonds. When you buy those bonds, you are declaring that you bought bonds. But you don't have to declare which party you give it to. Similarly, when I receive the bond as the political party, I accept those bonds in good faith. I get it into my bank account. And I don't have to declare which person or which company gave those bonds. Both sides, there's complete anonymity. Even State Bank does not keep a correlation which bond is given to party X and which political party has encashed that exact bond.
There is only an anonymous watermark.
No, that watermark is to make sure that no forgery happens. Because, this is like currency for 15 days. So, for that, they have kept that watermark to ensure no forgery happens. But they mix up all those bonds once they get into the vault. At the time of issue, no serial number is written against any bond. So there is anonymity. And you won't believe that has encouraged more and more people and companies and individuals who otherwise would not be donating or participating in the political process to actually come forward. I can see this election, significant amounts of money for all parties coming through the bond process. We as a policy have decided not to accept any money except under a check, a bond, or if somebody gives less than 2,000 rupees, that's a pretty small amount. There also, the Prime Minister said, there also you insist they do it digitally, through a BHIM app or through one of the electronic modes. So we are trying on our side to completely get out of the illegitimate offers that used to come earlier also, that we will not accept anything from anybody at all. And the entire public funding of elections should become honest. That's the intention with which electoral bonds have been introduced. I think it's honest money, financing honest electoral activity to give an honest government. And I do hope all political parties will take advantage. Some who are not willing to accept them or who are opposing them, I would like all of you to ask them a question. Is it because they wanted to skim part of the donations and not use it for legitimate political activity that they are avoiding the receipt of checks or bonds? Otherwise, all political parties should happily be accepting clean money. Why is anybody opposing it at all? It's beyond my imagination. Do they want politics to go down the wrong path, or do they want honest money to finance politics? And I urge all of you that you are well-meaning people. You want Indian politics to be clean, to be honest. I urge all of you that you must participate, whatever levels of participation you like, big or small. And whichever party you like. I'm not even making a pitch on this platform that you support the Bharatiya Janata Party. You may like to support any political party in the country. But please, whoever you believe in, whoever you trust can do good for this country, participate in the political process. Because you need a good government. A good government will be good for India. And what's good for India is obviously good for all of us in this.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears slightly to move a little to economics and finance. And in this will resonate with you because you did spend a very, very short but intensive period in structuring this year's budget. And you would have realized how tough it is to meet the varying needs of our society and yet maintain fiscal discipline of the usual 3.2, 3.3. You have faced that up front and you have managed to, grapple with it. It's a tough battle. Many of us in industry are very worried about, or apprehensive, not worried is not the right word. We are apprehensive that in the coming years, what is likely to happen is that your fiscal headroom for pump-priming the economy with public expenditure, which is what the last 4-5 years has done very well, because by the time you inherited the economy, private investment had almost crashed. And to get it swinging back again is taking a lot of effort, as we all know. So for the last 4-5 years, a large portion of the growth has been pump-primed by public expenditure, because of certain favorable circumstances, because of focus, etc., etc. Your headroom going forward to use the consolidated funds of India, because there have been some strictures now by the CII on the use of off-budget financing vehicles also. So the headroom you have in the consolidated fund of India and associated revenue streams, the fiscal discipline that you have set for yourself, which we all value, leaves you very little headroom for continuing to pump prime the economy to achieve 7, 8, 9% growth in a situation where other competing demands, as we have seen from the agrarian sector, from universal basic income, stroke direct benefit transfer, stroke health, education, and all those sectors are increasingly politically and socially going to be driving public expenditure in that direction, leaving very little for pump priming on the infra front. So the solutions obviously are known to you. The question really is, what direction is a government, or what direction should any government take? Should it be to really crank up the PPP engine again across different sectors and draw private capital in? Should it be a faster turnaround of state-owned assets, which is called monetization or asset recycling? What, in your view, is an appropriate economic strategy where your fiscal headroom is limited for pump priming the economy?
Well, at the outset, Vinayak, we all remember the story we inherited in 2014. Fragile 5 economy, double-digit inflation, falling growth, falling or increasing fiscal and current account deficit. It was a serious crisis-type situation that we inherited. To the credit of Prime Minister Modi and Finance Minister Mr. Jaitley, they have assiduously built up the economy over the last 5 years, to the extent that we are now at 2.5% inflation from 13-14% about 10 years ago, or even until 2011-12, we were at double-digit inflation. Our growth numbers, while this year is still in the 7.2, 7.4 category as they've estimated, my own sense is unless we had built up this foundation of low current account deficits, low fiscal deficits, low inflation, low interest rates, we wouldn't have been able to aspire for what we are aspiring in the next 5 or 10 years. And in fact, if you ask me, over the next 2 or 3 decades. So we are right, and as you rightly pointed out, during this period, it was very difficult to get private investment to pump prime because certainly there were challenges, there were banking challenges, there were credit issues, there was capital issues, the stock market had gone down to abysmally low levels. There's a whole holistic problem that we had to grapple with. Today things are different. We are almost touching 40,000 on the Sensex. We are at very, very affordable levels of inflation. Interest is continuously falling, and looking at the trend, I see going forward a significant possibility to further reduce interest rates. Oil prices have been reasonably stable, so current account deficit is no more a concern. We are at the lowest CAD last month, over the last 17 months or so. So things are in a situation where the banking system is again revving up. We have significantly been able to control foreign borrowing. So if you'll see, I mentioned in one of the interactions that in the last 5 years, while foreign exchange reserves have gone up from 300 billion to 419 billion today. We inherited 300 billion, Udaybhai, and we had 419 today. But what we also inherited was some 320 or some odd billion of external debt, which has not gone up in the 5 years. In fact, probably has in fact come down a little bit. We even repaid the 35 billion that the UPA towards the fag end of their tenure had borrowed to pump prime the rupee. We've even repaid that entire amount with interest. We've paid all the subsidies that they had left behind unpaid. So we've actually managed to clean up the balance sheet, and yet the capex of the government, which is not necessarily fully financed by the budget, but where we have a role by viability gap funding, some sort of subsidy, some of balance sheet items also, has tripled in the last 5 years. What we inherited was about 3 lakh something per year. We are now at 9.5 lakh. So we are 3x in 5 years. I dare say you would never find a period in Indian history where in 5 years, every economic parameter has improved so significantly, which means we've prepared the base for the future. going forward, my own sense is that in the next 5 years, you're looking at a huge amount of capex on the infrastructure side in this country. You're almost, and as the same run rate goes, by 2024, the economy will be having government-supported capex. I'm not even talking of pure private capex, to the tune of 25 lakh crores by 2020. Now, government's job is not to finance all projects, but let's say a road has a certain traffic. In the long run, you can see traffic going up, but in the short run, it may need some viability gap funding. When you look at solar power, wind power, we did support it initially. When we look at extra budgetary support, we look at the financial viability of every project. Otherwise, you would never get funds. So when I do, let's say, electrification in the Indian railways, now that payback of that is under 3 years or 3.5 years. With, after charging interest, the payback of electrification will be 3.5 years or so. When we did the LED project, I've said it before, we have only invested $2 billion as a nation. 1.4 billion LED bulbs being replaced at a cost of under $2 billion. But we are all collectively, and I hope all your businesses also are saving, nearly $7 billion every single year, every year. So we are doing very economically prudent management and support. But how did this happen? With the government company, ESL, giving the initial trust and some, 300 million bulbs, the ESL procured and sold, thereby bringing down prices by 87%. Now it's a fully private sector led initiative. Now ESL doesn't need to buy and sell bulbs. They've moved on to much better products, or much more valuable products. So our approach is empower the private sector, give the initial trust, make the project economically viable. Wherever it needs, supplement the project finances. So the refinery in Kakinada and in Rajasthan, both those refineries needed a viability gap funding. We've asked both those states, Rajasthan agreed, Andhra has not yet agreed. We said, you give us the viability gap funding and $6 billion, $12 billion of 2 refinery projects will be coming up. So our approach is extremely business savvy, business minded. I think Mr. Jetli, more than a lawyer, has almost worked like an investment banker.
No, it's an interesting observation, because as we were talking, this is an interesting phase in our political economy. Government supported private sector and related capex, including off-budget.
And I would rather support that infrastructure building, which will help us in the long run, than give out a dole, because that dole is going to be lost. Maybe give a temporary feel-good factor, but ultimately it's not going to help the economy. But look at what happened in the 1860s in America, post the war. They pump primed initially with a huge amount of investments in infrastructure. Post the Great Depression, the New Deal of Roosevelt was all about pump priming the economy. Japan did that. China did that after 84. So that's the way forward.
It's this kind of a hybrid annuity, or, this 40% viability gap, capital support, this combination of government supporting private sector capex is indeed a good model, and we hope that, in the years ahead, we are able to see more of this. I am now going to seek your permission. I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question. And I do that with the full realization that you have been, over the years, very frank with us, open with us, and that gives me the confidence to ask you a frank question. And that is about data.
So far, you have not been asking me tough questions.
Simple. This was simple. This one is tough. The one coming up. See, there are large sections of even this audience that in private conversation over a cup of tea, over a drink, or in an aircraft, or sitting together in a drawing room, the conversation turns towards the authenticity of Sarkari data. Whether it is employment, whether it is growth, whether it is X, whether it is Y or Z, that the noise level has risen to a certain level which we have not heard before about people talking about. Some supporting, some questioning, but there are both sides to this. What is your guidance to us? We are an industry chamber of commerce. What is your guidance to us?
Well, let me begin with a little real life example about data, just so that the perspective is well understood. And frankly, when I come to the second part of my answer, you will understand that everybody in this room is the culprit of the data going wrong.
Was this a tough question or easy question?
But very, very nice. Very easy question, and thank God you asked me. My office will think we've scripted this together. Because actually this is something I think the record needs to be set right. When I became railway minister about 19 months ago, everywhere I went, the issue was about punctuality. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe not many of you travel by train here, but maybe somewhere the youngsters at the back may be traveling by train sometimes. Everywhere I went, I got the story of bad punctuality on trains. And every review I did in the railways, and you know what kind of reviews I do. Not scary. You don't have to quote other IAS officers who've given a wrong picture about me. But I'm sure the people are happy that I'm a little tough. You don't want a soft minister who's just mollycoddling with the bureaucracy.
Scary for the people who are in that review meeting.
But every review meeting, they would come up with data. Oh, our zone is 90% on time. Another zone, 98% on time. Every damn zone was doing a damn good job on punctuality. I was confused. How do I now talk to my officers? And what do I answer to the people of India? So we started getting to the root of the problem. It's a 160-year organization. And lo and behold, how is the data compiled? The station master writes what time the train came and what time the train went. And that's what is taken up right till the chairman, railway board and the minister. And it gives you a picture that the railways, everything is hunky-dory. So all we did last year, in 17, towards 17 end, is I ordered all the intersection points, put automatic data loggers. Right? So every 40 kilometers or 30 kilometers, there was a data logger. And only 96 data loggers to begin with. Now there are many more. At a cost of about 1 lakh each. 1 crore rupees. I started getting the data fed in automatically at some 96 points. Every station master in between knew if he fudges the data, he'll get found out in minutes. And anybody who gets found out doing this in my ministry, you know what happens. And believe me, I switched on all these data loggers on 1st April 2018. It's not an April Fool's story. And lo and behold, 31st March to 1st April, punctuality fell by 20%. Straight 20% fall in punctuality. Obviously, the trains didn't start getting late overnight. But the true data started coming. Now, when you go to a doctor, he can only treat you if you know the problem, if you tell him the problem. If you go and stand in front of a doctor, he'll take out your heart instead of replacing your knee. So it was a similar situation. Now empowered with that data, June, July, August, 3 months, 17 zones, I would sit relentlessly, literally with micro issues, even with whether do you have a spare rake that an incoming train gets late, can another rake replace it and go so that the next train also doesn't get late. And we worked assiduously on the entire story. And today on the 1st of April, 1 year later, though I've worked on it only 6 months, by the time all the reviews, my own understanding, what's the solution to the problem, we are better than what we were on 1st April 2018. We are better than that. So once, not 1st, what we were on 31st March with the fudge data. Today we are better than what we were with the fudge data in terms of punctuality. And the number of minutes lost, which is how you calculate in the railways, as you know, is down to about half and in many cases to 1/3 in many zones. So that's the impact good data can have. Because then you can solve the problem. We all know in this room, and I dare say every one of us, we hire one person, but we contract 3 persons. There is literally in this country so many new businesses coming up, so many new entrepreneurs coming up. Nature of jobs is changing. Technology is taking over in many things. New age jobs, an Ola and an Uber person working in that is never going to get reported. And it's like a question. If you ask a question, do you have a job? Many people will say no. But do you have a livelihood? I think most people may end up saying yes. Because even a domestic today would probably be earning 20,000 rupees, as madam will tell you, with 3 or 4 part-time people coming to her home. But it's a livelihood, it's not a job. Now many people complain that when the railways advertises, then why did you get 1.5 crore people? That's because in this country we still have the mindset, many people, that government job, cushy job, whether you work or you don't work, you are permanent. In fact, it's better not to work. You are safer, there'll never be a vigilance case also against you. And you have a house, you have pension, you have everything taken care of. So I think there's an attraction for a defined formal job, which you can't wish away. But the world is moving towards entrepreneurship, towards startups. Catch any of your children today, they want to do a startup. They don't want to do a structured NTPC type power plant. Now, in this changing day and age, should that data not be more robust? Should it not capture the current day reality? GDP. Now, GDP data every 10 years undergoes a revision in the base year and a revision in how it is calculated. Because, for example, some of that data may be capturing typewriters sold 30 years ago. There's no typewriter sold today. But it may not be capturing the manufacturing activity of mobiles, which is a business of the last 3 years. So they are different. All these television channels, each one of them may be having thousands of singers and other people, cameramen, blah, 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 support staff. None of them may show up in a job. But if you tell people that if you don't have even 6,000 rupees income a month, we are going to give you an additional 6,000 rupees. Then everybody today who's also either under a PF number or ESI number or who's paying income tax or who may be earning 20,000, 30,000 rupees also, will all start underreporting. And will all want to go down to less than 6,000 on the record. And I'll tell you a live example of the railways. In Coal Vinayak, you may remember, I had done a portal and told all the coal mining companies that all your contract labor, I want that entire data on the website. Name, PF number, PF paid, ESIC number, ESIC paid, minimum wages paid. As the principal employer, I am responsible. By the way, so are all of you for your contractors. And I said, I want all that data on the website. And we started that process. By that time, I moved to railways. Now, I've been struggling with railways to do it. Now I'm finding some traction. But you know what my officials tell me? They tell me, sir, the people are now telling us, don't put our name on the official record. I will not accept money by digital payment or check or an RTGS into my account. I don't want PF and ESIC. I only want cash. Please pay me on the side. Because if I take the amount officially, I'll lose my BPL card and I'll lose a potential toll that the government may give me. Now, do you want, that's what I meant when I said, it'll become a race to the bottom. You'll have people fighting one on each other to try and show my income is less than 6,000 and give me another toll. Our effort is give everybody a house. Give everybody electricity, toilet, good education, good health. Take care of their basic necessities. Give them a skill. Encourage them to work for a living. Create infrastructure which will create jobs. Now, when I talk of, let's say, 25 lakh crores on capex only of the government, forget what else the private sector invests. What would be a labor component? You'll agree a labor component would be 25% of that? Yeah. Fair enough. So 25 lakhs means you're talking of 6.25 lakh crores as a labor component only on government supported projects. The rest apart. And look at the incremental jobs that it will create. At an average of about 1.5 lakh, you're looking at 4 crore jobs being created out of that. 4, actually more than that. Just by the government supported infrastructure. So the world is actually, but none of them, mind you, may show up in the job data. Job data will still show the railway official employees on my roll. But all these will be subcontracted. The private sector will be participating.
You're saying a comprehensive new system is required.
Which is what is possibly being tried to be.
Which is then something the government should be doing. Right, honestly. I mean,
it's our job to do it because otherwise it will be like the railways. Yeah. Wrong data. It's like garbage in, garbage out. That's what they taught us when they taught us computers 30 years ago. Or when I did my ISO 9002. I remember TUV or somebody came in and the first lesson they taught me was garbage in, garbage out, or write what you do or do what you write. Those are the catchwords we used to learn in industry those days, right? So my submission is, any of the naysayers who has any doubt, reflect on what was the data being given earlier, what was the span of industry and real jobs that were being captured in that. Look at the GDP calculations 10 years, 20 years ago, what kind of businesses it reflected, and what is happening in India and the rest of the world today. And see if there's a correlation between the two. If not, I think encourage us to get the right data, the right sources, the right understanding of the data, so that as a doctor's job, which is what we are supposed to do, we're supposed to handhold and help the country, the countrymen, industry, business, farmers, small industry, everybody. Our job will be better done. We'll really know where the nation's resources should be targeted. We'll really understand where the stress is and do our job better and possibly really do good for all of you also.
I suppose we are slowly running out of time. We have CD, you're showing me how much? 10 more minutes? Okay. So I'm actually going to ask you one question on railways.
You know, CB, is like the IAS officer in the ministries. So minister, koi bhi ho, aaye jaye. CB will decide 10 minutes or 11 minutes.
Which is true. वो एक steel frame of the bureaucracy तो चाहिए ही चाहिए.
It is lovable, absolutely lovable. Actually, if I was in your shoes, I would give a round of applause for CB alone.
CB, you can take a bow. You can stand up and take a bow. So I have a question for you, sir, on railways. Again, it's a conceptual question. You are now heading that institution, which by any international standards is a behemoth. By track, by employment, by any index you take. Now, over the years, we've had a confusion of objectives. You've got 3 objectives in railways. You've got a social objective, for example, subsidize suburban traffic. You've got a developmental objective, build lines in Kashmir, Northeast, Naxal areas. And you've got a commercial objective, which we will quiz you on the thing, saying operating ratio, batao, kyun 90 hai or 95 hai. Now, how does an institution, as a stakeholder, as a citizen of this country, how are you, as a head of that institution, wouldn't you be seeking clarity by saying, give me one dominant objective and there could be other subsidiary objectives. You can't only have one objective. But how do you grapple with the growth and development of the railways with 3 equal weighted objectives, social, commercial and development?
Vinayak, in तीनों में कोई अंतर विरोध नहीं. There's absolutely nothing which says all 3 cannot coexist. To my mind, the first and foremost objective is that all our customers deserve a better deal. Whether it's a passenger, whether it's all of you moving freight, hopefully someday some of you going on the Palace on Wheels to enjoy a vacation. I think every stakeholder, everybody is looking for a better quality of service, timely trains, clean stations, better facilities, good food, and sufficient availability of infrastructure. Are you aware the Indian Railways in the last 60 years or 70 years now post-independence has built up only 30% additional infrastructure. Only 30%. And the traffic, freight and passenger put together has grown around 1,500%. 30% infrastructure, 1,500% demand growth. Now in this situation, you almost have a broken system that we inherited with hardly any investments. But look at what we've done. We've removed political interference totally from it. Now it's run like a professional body and actually doing projects with an economic objective, understanding that projects should be viable. Yet, we do edge in a few projects which are, let's say, to the aspirational districts. Because connecting an aspirational district into the main system, you're actually opening up vistas of growth in a backward region. Going back to my old Maoist story, that those 150 districts, we certainly need to reach out. So I've just approved 6,000 crores for a project in UP, which goes to connect 3 or 4 aspirational districts. I thought it was well worth the monies that we are spending, that people over there will be able to connect and get involved with the rest of the world. Because after all of us in this room, or our forefathers someday, I promise you, look back into your family's history, except those who are fully a Delhi-based family. Someday, our forefathers had boarded a train, reached somewhere else, and made a career, made a life, made a business, and we are where we are today. Now we have to care for those who have been left behind. That development objective just cannot be ignored. So that is equally important. And since you also talked about the economic viability and operating ratio, we have challenges. I had to pay on the 7th Finance Commission 22,000 crore extra. Now on the railways revenue, that's a straight 14% shaved off your revenue. 14%. So you can imagine the struggle of trying to survive and be profitable with 14% shaved off your or added cost overnight, literally. But that's the part of doing business, the part of running a utility or a service in the government. So what did we do? Our soft option was just indiscriminately increase freight by 30-40%, increase passenger fares by 20-25%. We didn't do that. We kept a balanced approach, a nominal increase in freight, which I effected after 3 years, probably last year. Very nominal increase, and not in all commodities. Select commodities where I could see that they can afford it. Only in select commodities. Passenger I didn't touch because I believe that unless we give a good experience to the passengers, I have no right to ask them to pay more. Particularly the poor, particularly the common man, who's already struggling with enough challenges. It's very easy for us to say it should be a fully commercial organization, increase passenger fares, but I have to compete with the airlines also. Or half my trains will go empty if I increase fares in the upper classes. If I increase fares in the lower classes, my poor brother or sister in the villages may not get an opportunity to board a train like each one of us, I believe, has sometime or the other. So we have to balance this, and I'm trying to see if we can actually make money out of projects that we implement. If we can actually, having taken out politics, implement projects which add huge value. So I focus on all the coal routes, and it's giving us results. Are you aware that in last 5 years, we've produced more coal, 4 times more coal, produced and transported 4 times more coal than between 2009 and 14. Can you believe that? 37 million tons growth in the previous 5 years, 140 something million tons growth in these 5 years. All of this is possible, and that's helped us survive as a railway. And this is coal production, a large part of it goes by the railways. So same way electrification. When I'm 100% electric, I'll save $2 billion, 13, 14, 15,000 crores every year. That has helped me to keep the rising right.
Program is going
right. My stations, go and have a look at the stations out there. I was reviewing, and even though we are in election mode, my job as the minister doesn't get over. So we have to do our reviews. 31st March, and I've taken it as a mission, which I declared before the election. So there's no, I'm not violating the model code of conduct when I say this. I've taken a mission that 6,400 railway stations will be made Wi-Fi enabled on Ganesh Chaturthi, which is 2nd September 2019. 6,400. It was about 400, or less than 400 when I became a minister 19 months ago. It was 300 or 290 or something. 31st March, we've been able to build it up. That is 5 days back. To 1,000. Actually, it was 800 something by end of February. 1,000 on 31st March. I told them we have to reach 6,400 by 2nd September. That's the outer limit. If possible, faster. You want to make a guess what it is 5 days later today? Anybody wants to make a guess?
I don't want to make a guess. Somebody saying 2,000.
Shit, man. That means I've built up too much expectations. I'll have to moderate myself. 5 days, 500 more. It's 1,500 today. I got it at 6 o'clock in the morning today. So yesterday's figure. Maybe by today night it may become 2,000.
Good. It was not close.
500 in 4 days.
Was close.
Now, all of this is possible. It's a government organization. And Vikram may remember, because he used to interview me a lot before 2014 when I became a minister. आजकल उनके चैनल पे नहीं जाते हैं, वो अलग बात है. But I used to always say, even before I became a minister, sorry, no offense, man. Even before I became a minister, I used to always say, it's not the ownership of an organization which defines its success or failure. It's vision and its leadership. And I think Prime Minister Modi has given to this nation both vision and leadership so that we can aspire for a glorious future.
So that I have, as my IAS officer is telling me, we have 5 minutes more. And this time I'm not going to ask any questions. You ask some hard questions to Indian industry. That is your chance now.
Well, I think, first of all, I believe that we'll have to believe in ourselves. Our biggest problem that all of us, and I blame myself also, I'm as much, until a few years ago, I was always on that side of the table, attending all these functions or programs. But honestly, I think as a nation, we need to believe in ourselves. And I believe that the next generation is watching all of us very closely. Our next generation is watching every move we make. And I think we owe it to the youth sitting at the back of the room particularly. We owe it to them, all of us, that what we leave behind is an honest country. What we leave behind is a country that cares for the environment. What we leave behind is a country that's safe and secure. It's not struggling with challenges of ideology or challenges of national security within the country. And I believe an organization like CII can play a huge role when it comes to building up that trust in the next generation, that they can also go with confidence. They can also help this country rise from the kind of depths that we had at some points of time reached in the past and help bring back that glory to India. And I can only appeal to all of you, my friends, that let's all of us give it that huge push that's required. We have a golden opportunity to leave behind a better country, a better place to live in for the youth of India. And let's dedicate the rest of our working lives, for all of us in the first 3 rows and both of us. Can we all dedicate ourselves to leaving behind a better future for our children? And to my mind, all it will take is a little bit more concern, a little bit more social responsibility, a little bit more concern going beyond the money that we earn, a little more concern than the share price or a quarterly result. It'll need a little bit more of compassion and empathy, because possibly many of us have not ever lived in a home which didn't have electricity. Or for those of you in Delhi, an inverter or a DG set, which we've now helped to do away with. Maybe none of us has had the ignominy of having a mother or a sister not being able to go to the toilet between sunrise and sunset. And 2 out of 3 women in India had to suffer that ignominy. Not many of our wives or sisters have to suffer without sanitary pads and use old cloth or newspapers. Probably none of us in our homes don't have LPG gas connections. But if each one of us was to pick up some idea, it's your choice. You may look at something to do with the tribal education. You may look at something to do with our slums in the neighborhood. You may want to do something with the quality of education. Of course, doesn't mean you start setting up left-leaning institutes and universities in the neighborhood of Delhi. But on a serious note, if each one of us was to take it upon ourselves that on one project, I am going to immerse myself totally and make a difference and leave behind my mark in the footprint of sand. And I want the nation to remember me that I was the guy who kick-started a revolution, let's say, in just energy-efficient pumps maybe. That I'll make sure that every farmer in this country gets an energy-efficient pump which can dramatically change his future and the future of all of us. With the wasteful use of water is the next biggest challenge for this country. So I think if each one of us was to pick up one challenge and immerse ourselves totally in it at our age, then I believe all the youngsters sitting back there will remember our generations for the good things we've done and not curse us long after we are gone. Thank you.
Do I have your permission to close the session, sir? That's all right. Can I close the session? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And I think I started the session by suggesting and saying that you are going to have a very stimulating session. I don't think any one of you is disappointed. A big hand for Mr. Piyush Goyal.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. We thank Mr. Piyush Goyal, Honourable Minister for Railways and Coal, and request Mr. Chatterjee to present a memento of the occasion to the Honourable Minister. Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for our final session today, which is the valedictory session.